Okay, good morning, second grade. I'm sorry, you're not second grade. You are future third graders. We are continuing our mission through Greek mythology, and we are continuing to discuss and explain and identify events of myths. So you will be able to, I can explain the purpose of a myth and identify events myths explain, which means while I'm reading, you are thinking about what is the myth saying and is it explaining something, remember, in nature or some sort of belief. So those are the things I want you thinking about as I'm reading. This is where we left off last week. This was, oops, I'm on the wrong page. This was Demeter looking for her daughter Persephone. If you remember, Hades had stolen her when she wandered off and took her to the underworld because he loved her and he wanted to be with her. And so then, do you remember what happened when she started getting sad? When she started, remember, she is the goddess, or let's go back and look. Demeter, you should have your list with you as well of all of the gods and goddesses. She is the goddess of harvest and grain and crops. So when she got sad, what started happening? All of that stuff started to die, remember? She was no longer tending to them, so everything started to die and there was no more food or anything like that. So let's keep going. All right, then I think this is right about where we left off. She had went to go speak to the sun god, which is when she is told that Hades has taken her down to the underworld. Upon hearing this, Demeter began to despair, or she began to give up hope. Despair means to give up hope. How was she ever to retrieve or bring back her daughter now? Demeter began to weep for her lost daughter, and in her sadness, she forgot to tend to the crops in the fields. The grass turned brown, the wheat stopped growing, and soon there was no more food on the earth for the animals and people to eat. Every tree, vine, and field was bare. Even the gods received no more offerings, for the people did not have any food or meat to spare. And something you need to know is humans used to offer food to the gods and goddesses as gifts. So they used to give them offerings as gifts of appreciation or to keep them happy so that things could continue to grow. But because there was no food, nothing was growing, they could not give any offerings. So if we stop and think right now, like, what could this possibly explain? What actions? So her action, remember, is that she's sad and she's now no longer tending to anything, which has a reaction, right? So it can explain, what could this possibly explain? You can tell your parent, your sibling, your cousin. You could even talk to yourself if you want to. I had a plan to show some work samples today that I got last week, but unfortunately, Dojo is not loading any of them, so we can't look at them and talk about them. So hopefully I'll be able to do that tomorrow, and hopefully I will get a lot more work samples to discuss. Okay, so this could explain her sadness is the result of everything dying, right? Because she stopped caring for them. She stopped taking care of all those things that she was in charge of, which in a result, everything started to die. Okay. All right, so let's look at the characters that we see here. Who do you think this is? This would be Zeus, good. And who's his brother? Hades, yep. And then who is this? This would be Persephone. All right, so after some time, Zeus saw that people would starve if something was not done. Why were they going to starve? because Demeter was not tending to crops. Things were not growing anymore. So Zeus was like, people are going to starve. We got to fix this. Only gods and goddesses could go to the underworld and then leave. So Zeus traveled to the underworld to persuade Hades to let Persephone go. Why do you think that only gods and goddesses could go to the underworld and then leave? What's the difference between gods and goddesses and humans that we've talked about? We put it on our list. They were immortal. I don't remember where we put it, but I know we put it on the list that gods and goddesses are immortal, which means they can't die. So they are free to travel to the underworld and leave if they want to, where humans cannot. He tried to persuade Hades to let Persephone go. He said, Zeus told him, if you do not return Persephone to her mother Demeter, nothing will grow on earth again. So remember, myth can explain something. And right now it's explaining things are not growing right now. And the reason for that is because the goddess of all things that grow is sad. Demeter, if you do not return Persephone to her mother Demeter, nothing will grow on the earth again. The people will starve. I will gladly return her, Hades said, if she hasn't eaten anything. You know the rules, Zeus. Whoever eats of the food of the underworld or drinks of it water must stay forever. What do you think? Do you think Persephone ate something or drank something down there? And the picture, I see her standing next to stuff. What do you guys think? I don't know. I think the picture is giving us some clues that maybe she did. Let's find out. Zeus and Hades looked at Persephone, waiting for an answer. Had she eaten the food of the underworld? Persephone began to cry. What do you think that means? What do you think that means if she began to cry? Do you think that means that she ate something or that she didn't? I think if she started to cry, I think she ate something and she knows that she has to tell them. Let's find out. Persephone looked up at them and said, I ate 6 pomegranate seeds, she said. Oh no, you guys. She did eat. A pomegranate, in case you don't know, a pomegranate is a fruit. It kind of is like this. And you cut it open and you eat all the little seeds that come out of it. So now what do you think is going to happen? So there's a rule in place that if anybody eats or drinks of the underworld, they have to stay. But remember, Zeus is the king of all. He has control of everything. Gods, goddesses, the land, the underworld, everything. So what do you think is going to happen now? You think he's going to be able to work out a plan? You think he's going to have to just leave her there? And if he does just leave her there, what does that mean for the people on the earth? Because remember, everything is dying and people can't eat. So what do you think is going to happen? A rule was a rule, but Zeus knew that if Persephone remained in the underworld, nothing would grow. So he made a deal with Hades. For each seed she has eaten, Persephone will stay 1 month in the underworld as your queen. How many seeds did she eat? She ate 6 seeds. So how many months does she have to stay? She has to stay for 6 months. I want you to hold on to that thought for a second, and we're going to bring that back to our objective of what does a myth explain. So for each seed she has eaten, Persephone will stay 1 month in the underworld as your queen. For the rest of the year, however, she will live on earth with her mother, Demeter. So we know she ate 6 seeds. I want you to think. So that meant she had to spend 6 months down there. So how many months did she get to stay on earth? We know there's 12 months in a year, so she had to spend 6 months in the underworld and 6 months on earth. So what do you think that's going to correlate to? What's the connection with the months? And I want you to think like those 6 months when she's in the underworld, what's happening on the earth? Because remember, Demeter's still going to be sad that she's not there. So what is happening to everything on the earth? Is it living or is it dying? So for those 6 months that she is in the underworld, what type of season do you think it might be? What part of the year do you think it might be that she's living in the underworld? I want you to think about that. And so, oh, let's see. What do you think of this picture? I see them both here. I see the green growing. So this must be when she's allowed to live on the earth, come back to the land. And then I see this one and I see trees are dead. The mountains are brown. The wheat is the grass is dying. And so it was that for 6 months of the year, Demeter and Persephone were happy together. Fruit, wheat, and other plants sprouted from the ground, and it was spring. Are you listening to that? So let's stop and think about that. How does that connect to our objective? What is this myth going to explain to us? If the time when she comes back, the author just said it was spring, so this myth is explaining what? Give you a hint. It's 4 of them in a year. And one of them is spring. So this myth is explaining the seasons of the year, right? So as they grew, as the things grew, the world was bright and it was summer. So Persephone comes back during 2 seasons, spring and summer, which means when the other 6 months when she's gone is what? During those 6 months that Persephone lived in the underworld, however, Demeter would ignore all the crops and on the earth, and she would long to have her daughter back. The leaves would fall off the trees in autumn and would be bare in the winter. Ooh, did you hear what the author just said? I'm going to reread it. The leaves would fall off the trees in autumn and would be bare in winter. So did we cover all 4 seasons? We did. Once Persephone was returned to Demeter, it would be spring again. Ooh, man. So, nope, that's a new one. We're going to stop right there. So, with that being said, these are your homework questions. Let me see if I could do this again. Annotate text. So your first one is, what is this myth explaining to us? What is this myth explaining to us? Think about what the author said, what happens when Persephone is gone, and what happens when Persephone is back. Even this picture helps give you an answer. So what is this myth explaining to us? And how do we know? So I want you to make sure you give me something that we talked about. How do we know that's what it's explaining to us? What happened in the text? Okay, so make sure you answering that question. Then I want you to also answer. We use the word retrieve. Remember, Zeus went to retrieve Persephone, okay? That was one of the vocab words in here, retrieve. Demeter began to despair, gave up hope. How was she ever to retrieve or bring back her daughter? And then the second part of it says Zeus went to retrieve her. So the second question that you have is, I need you to write a sentence using the word retrieve, R-E-T, retrieve. Okay, so what does it mean to retrieve something? And write a sentence. Retrieve something and write a sentence using the word retrieve. So these are your 2 homework assignments, okay? All right, you guys, I love you. and I can't wait to see your work. Please remember to email it or text it to me, to my cell, okay? All right, I can't wait to see it. And please, 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 please don't forget to be reading something. Get on Reading A to Z, get a book, something. You need to be reading every single day. Okay, you guys, I love you. I love you, love you, love you, love you so much. And I will be talking to you soon.